Welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Let's begin with a summary of some of the stories amid headlines over the weekend.
On Sunday, the United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed Al Nahyan arrived in Angola for a state visit. During the visit, the UAE president is expected to meet with his Angolan counterpart, João Lourenço, to discuss the strengthening of bilateral relations, cooperation, and joint work with a focus on economics and development. In recent years, several key agreements have been signed, including the elimination of double taxation in the field of income tax and evasion in 2018, the promotion and protection of mutual investment in 2017, and the bilateral agreement on aviation cooperation in 2021. Still on Sunday, thousands of pro-Palestine protesters took to the streets of Tangier, northern Morocco, calling for an end to the war in Gaza amid what they described as the ongoing genocide and starvation in the Strip. A student participating in the rally, Abdullah Bahmoud, explained that he joined the march to express his solidarity with his people in Gaza, adding that the Palestinian cause dwells in their hearts and minds of the youth. Israel is pushing ahead with plans for the takeover of Gaza City, despite criticisms from international leaders. Elsewhere in Dakar, hundreds of pro-Palestine supporters marched in the region, calling on the government to sever ties with Israel amid the deepening famine crisis in Gaza. Executive Director of the Senegalese section of Amnesty International, Seydi Gassama, accused Israel of deliberately causing famine in the Strip and using starvation as a weapon of war, while others called for an immediate end to diplomatic relations with Israel. Also, Deputy of the National Assembly Amadou Ba noted that allowing a genocide to occur in the modern era will have catastrophic consequences. The commander-in-chief of the Libyan National Army, Khalifa Haftar, has appointed his son Saddam as deputy commander-in-chief during a ceremony attended by civil and military officials in the city of Benghazi, eastern Libya. During his speech to mark the occasion, the army chief said it was part of establishing a civil, unified, democratic and fully sovereign Libyan state. On his part, Mr. Saddam stated that he sees himself solely as a soldier within the armed forces, pledging to continue building the army and using the latest developments in the military science to ensure perpetual safe and peaceful life for the Libyan people. The Libyan National Army's General Command said the move aligns with its Vision 2030 for military development and efficiency, adding that further appointments are expected soon.
To other stories now, beginning in South Africa, where the government has refused to accept the U.S. withdrawal of about $427 million in support of its HIV program, considered one of the largest in the world. South Africa has more people living with HIV than any other country in the world. When U.S. President Donald Trump slashed America's foreign aid budget, the impact was immediate as free clinics closed their doors, leaving patients without medication. Though the government is unwilling to accept the U.S. aid withdrawal, it is struggling to keep head above water with the responsibility. More than 63,000 people depended on the 12 clinics across the nation that shut down. Up to 220,000 people have faced disruption to their daily HIV medication. Even before the cuts of the country's estimated 8 million people living with HIV, only 2 million were on medication. The concerns echo across Africa, the continent hardest hit by the U.S. aid cuts. The Trump administration has defended the cuts, saying the spending was not aligned with U.S. interests. Let's begin our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa. Innocent joins us from Johannesburg. Great to see you, Innocent. Our health is such a big issue on the continent, and I do understand, how difficult it must be for the government to let go of those U.S. funds, but how can it keep up?
Yeah, well, a very good evening to you, Amarachi. It's difficult to hear you. The sound is pretty low, but I got the last part of your question. Indeed, a devastating blow to South Africa. I mean, we do know that this was announced by President Donald Trump, on the 27th of February 2025, where he has announced that they're going to halt this particular funding. This, of course, Amarachi, it leaves millions of South Africans living with the disease in a very much precarious position and, of course, uncertain future. We do know that organizations that are dealing with these issues were actually presented with letters of termination, and they were told that they must halt everything to not to incur more, funds into this issue. But we do know that this will also affect the likes of PEPFAR. PEPFAR, Amarachi, is one of the programs that it's key in terms of dealing with the issues of HIV when you talk about HIV medication and HIV testing. So we know that it started in 2003, and since then they managed to raise around 8 billion US dollars, and that has gone far in helping and mitigating, fighting the scourge of HIV in not only in South Africa, but of course in the region. But Amarachi, I can tell you now that the impact is already being felt on the ground. And again, it's going to be difficult for government to mitigate and deal with this issue, considering that the fiscus and treasury has already announced that they do not have funds to deal with this issue. But I guess because South Africa is one of the resilient countries, maybe they'll find a way around this, Amarachi.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, Innocent, if there are alternatives that the government is considering, and that maybe, the shortage might be because possibly the government is depending too much on US aid.
Amarachi, please repeat the question.
Excuse me. Innocent, I was wondering, about the alternatives open to the South African government as the US aid cuts are made, and perhaps maybe the government was too dependent on the aid.
Yeah, so Amarachi, this will affect the around 44 projects that are already being placed in the region when it comes to the issues that will deal with HIV, for an example, HIV testing, and of course HIV medication, and TB as well falls under that. But we do know, Amarachi, that in the region by population, South Africa is leading with around 7.5%, 7.5 million people who are actually, living with this disease. And of course, Mozambique is number two. But when you look at the population by percentage in the region only, Eswatini is number one because, Marachi, the issue here is that it's not going to affect only South Africa, but the surrounding countries in the SADC region, because people come here for work. They come to South Africa to plow their skills because, I mean, South Africa is one of the economic hubs here in the region. So they come here for work, and therefore they need those services. And it's challenging for government to mitigate that. As I've indicated, that the impact is already being felt, where in local clinics, the foreigners are being turned back. They're not allowed to actually get, you know, uh, attention too. But so again, it's gonna be challenging. I guess maybe it's time. It's a wake up call for the region, for these nations to say that since this is happening, let us put together funds to deal with the issues that has to do with HIV in the region. But again, this move, Amarachi, it goes without saying that it's going to derail, track back all the progress that has been made in dealing and fighting HIV in the region.
You're very correct about that, Innocent, and it will take a while before governments are able to coordinate any action to mitigate the loss. Now, aside the provision of medication, what sort of sensitization is still going on in South Africa? People being careful with their interactions. What sort of sensitization is coming from the government and from these health agencies to the people?
Yeah. So the government has not yet outlined what they're going to do in terms of, mitigating this. But the bottom line here, Amarach, is that Treasury does not have enough funds to basically deal with this. And this move has received a lot of, skepticism and a lot of criticism from, health organizations around the world, and of course, civil society groups. And they feel that this move, Amarachi, if anything, it's politically motivated. And they feel that this stems back from the South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ, and this is the friend of America. And on the other side, South Africa took the non-alignment stance when it comes to Russia-Ukraine war. So in a way, this was a build-up. America feels that South Africa is not with them, and you would know that, on the other hand, South Africa is part of the BRICS bloc, and they're talking about the de-dollarization. And on the other hand, South Africa is one of the junior partners of the, whether we like it or not, of the BRICS bloc. And so, in a way, many people feel that America is targeting South Africa with all of these issues around genocide in the country, where we do know that there's nothing like that. So it is going to be difficult for South Africa. It is going to be difficult for the government of South Africa and for the governments of the SADC region. I guess it's time for them, Amarechi, to put measures in place to fight this, because this, in many respects, it's going not only to affect people who are living with this disease, but the job side of things as well. People will be unemployed because a lot of people are employed by these organizations. So when they're not receiving funding, they are in crisis, Amarachi.
Terrible situation it is. Innocent, thank you again for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, colleague.
The African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit has been holding in the Nigerian Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The summit is a landmark conference aiming to advance Africa's security framework through high-level discussions. It serves as a critical platform for Chiefs of Defense Staff from various African nations and leaders from the global defense industry to engage in dialogue about shared security challenges and to explore strategic insights that can enhance regional and global cooperation in defense. Earlier today, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, stressed the importance of African-led security cooperation and addressing the continent's complex threats.
Africa stands on the edge of unprecedented opportunity, driven by a vibrant youth population, vast resources, and a spirit of innovation. Yet, this promise is challenged by a complex and evolving spectrum of security threats. From the scourge of violent extremism and terrorism to the menace of transnational organized crime, piracy, and the insidious impacts of climate change on conflict, these challenges recognize no borders. This gathering offers us a rare opportunity to forge a unified front. It is a platform to harmonize our doctrines, strengthen interoperability, and build enduring trust among our defense institutions. We must therefore seize this opportunity to craft a new architecture of African-led security cooperation. As host nations, Nigeria is deeply committed to the ideals of regional stability and continental defense integration. Our armed forces have consistently contributed to peacekeeping operations, counter-terrorism efforts, and humanitarian missions across Africa. We believe that true security is not achieved in isolation. It is built through shared intelligence, joint training, and coordinated action. Nigeria stands ready to work with our brothers and sisters across the continent to develop frameworks that are proactive, resilient, and responsive to the realities of our time. Distinguished colleagues, the battlefield is evolving. The threats of today are no longer confined to conventional warfare. They are digital, asymmetric, and often invisible. The enemy is within. As Chiefs of Defense Staff and heads of our armed forces, we must lead the charge in modernizing our forces, investing in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military technology, without which it will be difficult for us to achieve our security. The challenges before us are great, but so too is our resolve. Let us rise above division and embrace unity. Let us build a continent where our people can live free from fear and where our armed forces are symbols of stability, professionalism, and pride. Let us use this summit to explore how we can build a defense industrial base that is Africa in origin, Africa in design, and Africa in purpose.
The African Union has thrown its weight behind a campaign calling on governments and international organizations to abandon the 16th century Mercator world map and adopt alternatives to accurately reflect the size of the African continent. Geography professor Daliba Nahunu, speaking in the Ivorian capital Abidjan, says the correct the map campaign would boost pride among the youth in Africa and stress that most world maps misrepresent the continent's true scale. The Mercator map has been used for centuries in education and geopolitics across the Western world, with critics arguing it diminishes the status, size, and contribution of the continent.
The map can be adopted. For example, tech companies are still using the outdated map, so they can quite easily choose to start using the equal Earth map projections. Other practical steps we've already discussed. We also must make sure that we see that correct representation wherever we platform the map of Africa or the map of the world. And other practical steps are that for as long as we are having this conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation, we also need everyone to follow very closely. Issue of perception. So far, the perception that many of us have grown up with is that Africa is insignificant and small in scale. So we are also helping Africans and non-Africans understand that that is not the case.
The president of South Africa's economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, has called on African leaders to dismantle colonial boundaries and pursue continental unity under a single president, currency, parliament, and military command. Mr. Malema was speaking on Sunday while addressing thousands of lawyers and interests at the Nigerian Bar Association's annual general conference in Enugu.
We must make sure that no single corner of Africa there are guns where Africans are killing each other. Africans must always be together against the enemy forces who want to exploit our country. We are here today to reclaim our land. We want the land of Africa to be returned to Africa because it belongs to the Africans. We want the minerals of Africa to be returned to the Africans because that's where they belong. We want to build industries in Africa and process our minerals here in Africa. We've got the capacity. We must never allow the imperialist forces to divide us in order to take our minerals from us. We demand one Africa. We demand borderless Africa. We demand Africa with one president, with one currency, with one military command, with one parliament, because we know the currency of Africa will be much more stronger against the American currency. We don't care what Trump thinks of us. He will never choose a policy position for Africans. We are not subject of Trump. We must refuse to be subjects of Trump. We must stand together as the world changes and show the world that Africa is one and Africa is equal to all nations, to China, to Russia, to America.
The Sudanese capital, Khartoum, is dealing with an outbreak of dengue fever, fueling fears of a wider epidemic as worsening health conditions and a lack of preventive measures spark growing public anger and urgent calls for government action. Hospitals are said to be overcrowded with patients, including children, arriving for checkups and treatment, while other scenes reveal piles of uncollected rubbish mounting in the streets. Local media outlets report that the accumulation of waste in neighborhoods and public areas has worsened the reach of mosquitoes, the main carriers of the dengue virus. Director of Infection Control at the Ministry of Health explains that the epidemiological situation has deteriorated further since the war. Well, 3 young sisters are said to have drowned in a rubber boat carrying migrants in the central Mediterranean after waves of up to 1.5 million repeatedly washed over their vessel. The revelation was made by German rescue charity Rescue Ship. It says about 65 people were rescued, including the sister's mother and brother, as well as 3 pregnant women and a 7-month-old baby. The dangerously overcrowded rubber boat had departed from Libya's Zuwara city and started taking on increasing amounts of water a few hours later. Libya is a major launching pad for migrants who make the treacherous journey across the Mediterranean, hoping to reach the Italian island of Lampedusa. A data exchange system has been identified as the missing link in the government's drive to deliver trust, efficiency, and seamless services to citizens. The Nigerian federal government, says a platform will enable secure data sharing across agencies and the private sector, boosting innovation and growth. Our correspondent, Benny Ark, reports.
This high-level roundtable on digital public infrastructure, hosted by the federal government in partnership with the European Union, focused on creating a data exchange system for Nigeria. The event brings together key players, lawmakers, the Minister of Communications and his team, the head of EU delegation, the Director General of the National Information Technology Development Agency, the Postmaster General, and other stakeholders. Setting the tone, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry underscored the relevance of the roundtable.
The discussion at this roundtable will focus on three key pillars. 1. Establishing secure and interoperable technical frameworks for data exchange. Exploring policy and regulatory considerations for trusted data sharing. And examining technology systems that can support Nigeria's emerging DPI ecosystem.
The head of the EU delegation to Nigeria and the Director General of NIDA emphasized the need to build a sustainable and inclusive digital infrastructure.
We are here responding really the call of the ministry to support the development of the Nigeria data exchange platform, something that is not just a physical or a virtual reality, but something that is really the aspiration of a developed country who is trying to ensure that citizens can exercise their constitutional rights.
This digital data exchange platform is not just a technology project, but it is a platform that will help us drive national inclusivity and prosperity.
In his keynote address, the minister highlighted progress in digital identity and payment, saying the new initiative will complete the circle.
A well-designed, well-implemented data exchange system will provide citizens with better services delivered under a framework that guarantees privacy, data protection, security, and accountability. At the present, Nigeria lacks this critical stack of DPI, and that is why we are collaborating with the EU and our international allies.
The conference is expected to produce a roadmap for a data exchange system that will strengthen trust, improve governance, and drive economic growth. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
And as we end the program, did you know that Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa with over 232.7 million people? It also contains the largest city in Africa, Lagos, with at least 22 million urban residents. Now you know, and that's Network Africa. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Bani.